we've heard a lot of scary things today, but like security can be an enabler of great business and the value that APIs bring, right? Like we're all here talking about it because APIs are awesome, right? And they really, make the internet work. But if they're not done properly, then you got problems on your hands. So is that did I more or
No,
less kind of tee
that's
it
a
up?
great lead in, and including that, I could say earlier when listening to Scott Bly, who I absolutely love hearing from him. He and me have known each other for quite a while. My anxiety level was just increasing throughout his presentation, thinking about, okay, this is, the cybercrime, the asymmetric warfare. I mean,
Yeah.
if you didn't leave that presentation with some level of anxiety, I applaud you. But it's also that if the US Treasury, Cloudflare, T-Mobile haven't solved these problems, to some degree, we can get into this spiral of, well, if they can't solve these problems, how in the world am I supposed to solve
Yeah.
problems even
Yeah.
at a fraction of the scale that they're dealing with or the complexity?
Well,
So,
it's interesting in our workshops, we sort of, it's interesting. Bill Jones had the stat from Salt Security, like I think it was 56% or some number like that were config flaws, right? And
mhm.
our numbers aren't like that. Like our analysis says, and it had authentication at 1%, right? And I think if you were to slice the data by successful breaches, not like, the script kiddie type things, authentication would be real high on the list, and business logic right up there too. But let me step aside, man. I'll give you the
All right,
floor and take it away, please.
thanks. So, again, hello, everybody. I'm Dan Temkin. I am newly joined to Kong Inc., which is an API management platform strategy, again, based on the Kong, built off the Kong open source gateway, Kuma Mesh, into an enterprise solution offerings. Get into a little bit of that. Prior to Kong, I was at IBM for 12 plus years in different areas of application integration, API management, messaging, eventing, modernization strategies. And then prior to that, I was a customer working at State Farm Insurance, building out B2B real time integrations, over 300 different integrations over the course of 6 years, for banking and state integration for insurance verification and all sorts of things. I was also a member of a standards body, so I've dealt in that side of the world. So 20 years of working at the edge, at the integration edge of APIs. So, when looking at things, if we look at a lot of what this conference has been talking about, yes, we're often talking about in the lens of APIs, but a lot of what is being dealt with is the application security space. And one of the things I thought about is, well, let me actually focus really on just the API, just the contract. And I love that the developer portal presentation came before me. I was going to try to spend some time on that consumer experience of, we need to be able to provide good documentation, but also making sure that the information we provide back, especially things like air codes, is usable, but doesn't actually expose security risk, especially to external consumers that are outside of our organization. So, love that that was kind of pre-covered for me, and hopefully you can see this as a continuation. And we'll kind of focus more on the flip side of the runtime protection. So, looking at it from the most basics of a security. So, I'm not going to try to solve every problem. I'm really going to focus in a little deeper, and hopefully make us all happy, because this is an area of massive growth. If we kind of do the look back, and I love looking back because I've worked with every one of these platforms. I'm not that old, but I have worked at companies that still had mainframes, and I've worked with customers that have had mainframes where we're still exposing services, often as RESTful APIs from those mainframe business services, exposing assets, whether it be business or business data services or process services on those legacy systems. And as we went into the PC era, of course, we were building software solutions that were running on our desktop, and eventually we were able to network our local machines together, which then had the explosion of, oh, we can put these things as web applications. And we started developing really great complex applications, started decomposing our monoliths. Eventually, the mobile era with the iPhone, I would say most of us would agree, 2006 was that tipping point of really RESTful architectures, where we started building on top of REST JSON as a way to deliver data and services to the edge over low bandwidth connections, because we wanted to not deal with those large XML message sizes. So we didn't want to parse them onto mobile devices. So we kept going smaller and smaller. And then, of course, that led into the advent of microservices with Kubernetes, and we kept building more and more APIs. So this has been great. This platform shift is saying, yes, we're going to have more APIs. And of course, the AI era has just seen that next level explosion of APIs. Now, of course, from a security standpoint, if we were listening to the earlier conversations, oh my gosh, every single one of those is an attack vector. Every single one of those is a worry. But at the same time, every single one of those is adding as a business asset to the organizations that are building them, assuming they can leverage them securely and at scale. So before we dive into the kind of different ways we've built APIs over the time, and again, really looking at from an implementation practices, those raw materials of APIs, and this is where often it's really easy to lean back and just talk about REST or RESTful, or Open API spec, or kind of going back to Swagger. Maybe we were talking the Waddle or the some of the RAML contracts, so different contract led development for conversing traffic over HTTP in a standardized format. Luckily, we've narrowed down for the most part into the Open API specification sets. Of course, based, choose your version. Some of those versions have some different idiosyncrasies, as well as interoperability problems, which of course then can tie back to security problems, because of course, not everybody's updating their services. There's still services, and I can say this with confidence, that I coded over 15 years ago that are still running in production. Guaranteed those are not in compliance with a Open API specification as of 3.1. It wouldn't meet those requirements, even if someone tried to bend them into that contract format. But RESTful services aren't just the only thing that are out there. We have a proliferation of WebSockets, GraphQL, gRPC as an example. From the eventing and messaging space, we have Kafka and multiple different AMQP and other messaging implementations. It's never been a better time really to be building services to tie together applications and kind of be able to curate my experience with all of these different ways we can interact with our systems. And of course, AI on it as another layer. And I love that. I heard so often that AI really is, it's a new way of thinking about APIs. It's not, especially when we talk about MCP. It's kind of that next generation of where we want to talk about API, but please don't use that word. But it's going to be that next explosion there. And of course, all of this has been added with the different architectures that we're delivering APIs on, and still have APIs running and services sitting out there today. So again, this massive explosion, which is great for the business. I have lots of flexibility in tying and composing together different services. But at the same time, the flip side of that coin is what we're all here today talking about, is API security. How do I deal with that duality that exists between these two sides of the fence? So before I get there, so again, that's a little tease on the duality side. You have to remember that APIs were not all built the same. And again, I'm using APIs in that general sense. Initially, again, from those of you who are been developing as long as I have or longer, APIs were there to help with backend complexity. They're really, I need to tie together services together. And we're no longer all using Java, so we can't just use JAX RPC. We need to start tying together multiple programming languages together to, again, as part of that, breaking up the monolith, having distributed architectures, having more developer choice early on, and saying, I might want to choose other packages. So we started composing our applications using different APIs. And it was really that byproduct of software development. It was something that we were focused on as a technical asset. Security, if we did it, we might have been like, okay, let's do just enough. Let's make sure, maybe I didn't even do TLS-based security. Maybe I just sent a basic auth credential or an API key, which I would argue is even worse than a basic auth credential. It's not even two pieces, it's one string. And is mostly viewed as internal. So that was another, it's internal. It's behind the firewall. It's deep in my multi-layer architecture. I'm not as concerned about that. But of course, at that point in time, especially in history, there were less poked holes in our firewalls. There were less ways of services calling in and out of the organization that had to be dealt with. So they were built, and guess what? There's still thousands of these around. Your organization probably has lots of them, especially if you've been around for some time. Now, over time, we saw that APIs were really a critical technical infrastructure. So they moved out from developers' tools I need to be able to call in between systems. And of course, we got the spaghetti of services calling each other. And all right, let's create API management platforms as a technical asset. And let's have gateways that can provide some level of decoupling. And let's have the ability to socialize through a developer portal, but still very much seen as an internal asset to a way to act as an accelerator. And finally, we're seeing organizations, and this is much more prevalent now than it was even just a few years ago, seeing API platforms as a business innovation factory. So they're building and thinking about APIs differently. Instead of the technical group thinking about, oh, I'm a coder, I'm going to start building an API, I'm going to start building my schemas and structures. Now we have business analysts and business director teams and leads in different departments that have no technical background saying, oh, I might not know how to build an API. I might not be a coder, but I know that APIs are important. I know I need to invest in them. I know they are part of my brand identity, which is part of how we're going to go to market. I might even say things like, oh, I want this new product that we're going to deliver to be API first. They see that this is an important thing. And so their focus is driving more investment in that, which of course, helps, drive investment in the platform for the technology group to start building in new efficiencies. So we see this feedback cycle, especially as we see organizations realizing that APIs are business assets and not just this technical, screen door that they have to worry about all the entry points that are from a security exposure point. Now, I threw up a little arrow at the bottom that some will say is pretty controversial. The risk and exposure. Is it really towards the business innovation factory? Or is it actually at the back end complexity side where we're building APIs that weren't well exposed, weren't necessarily properly documented, didn't have good security practices. The risk and exposure on that side could be just as great or more than the APIs that are building out from a business innovation factory side. Now, the difference really often is the perception of risk and this perception of value of those APIs. If I'm part of the line of business funding this technical development effort, I might see those back-end complexity APIs being, oh yeah, that's technical gorp. I don't understand how those that 100 APIs actually ties to deliver anything for my business. So because of that, I don't necessarily understand the value that my business should be associating with investing in security practices. Okay. And then again, some of those fallacies of, oh, those are deep on the internal infrastructure. I don't have to worry about those. TLS, yeah, if you can try, but maybe not even. Where the risk there can be just as great or greater than the APIs built to the business platform. So again, something for you to think about when you look at your catalog, your API state in your organizations of where is the real risk versus where's the perceived risk on the values. Now, this shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody, but the beauty is every industry, every project that we talk to companies about, and I've been talking to them for decades, APIs are powering every initiative. There is not a single initiative that I've gone and talked with a company about where an API, whether it be a business-led API, an internal API, a third-party exposure point, services that their integration they're calling out to, leveraging AI, of course, all of these different projects from different industries are all API driven, whether they classify them or not. They're all leveraging APIs across all of the different the different API types, whether it be REST-based, gRPC, eventing, with event-driven architecture. All of these collections that I have up here are all service projects that have a massive API aspect, and of course the underlying those generics, AI adoption, as we've been talking about this whole conference, the risks associated with how we interact with LLMs is very different because it's an unstructured context. So how do we parse? How do we protect against data leakage there? Digital transformation projects, massive investment areas still in 2025, as organizations are constantly looking at how can I move off of legacy hardware. How can I move off legacy data centers? Maybe some companies are going, oh, I moved too far to the cloud. Let me digitally go back to a colo or on-prem. It's that constant shift looking for the value. Of course, that often aligns with modernization efforts. Now, at the same time, governance projects are on the rise with lots of different industries getting more regulatory compliance requirements. Of course, a lot of those are then looking back at all those APIs that they delivered and are they meeting the governance that are needed? And of course, if they're not well documented, if they're not done in a unified fashion, it can be really hard to go back and redo those audits to go, I got to unpack that code. And maybe the developer who wrote that code doesn't exist at our company anymore. And maybe the notes that are in the code is bad. So how do I even kind of go back through that validation, especially if I don't want to touch that code because I know it works today, but if I mess around with it to actually go through the process of securing it, who will I break? What will be that blast radius of going in and touching that? Even though I'm trying to touch something from a security perspective, will I break something from a business logic perspective just because I'm going in and touching the code? So often when I know I and others go and talk about API security, and we talk about it in that tax and risk and let's get that anxiety level up. It's every API is built and deployed differently. You're going to run up lots of expenses there. Every API transaction is critical. A single failed transaction could lose you tons of money or an hour of outage. What are you going to do if that happens? Data loss prevention. What happens when people are stealing those records? How are you going to handle that from the business continuity perspective? Not every API is visible or managed. I don't even know what I have in my estate. I have all these undiscovered shadow APIs that are out there. It's overwhelming. I don't know what to do. And every API is a new attack vector. So this language that we tend to use, and again, every vendor, every consultant does come at API security from this lens of risk, risk, risk. Do you know what you have? Are you sure? Can you handle the breach? Can you handle the threat? How if these big companies can't do it, how are you going to do? How are you going to look at doing it? And yes, this type of leading with FUD, leading with that fear, uncertainty, and doubt, it definitely increases attention. Fear is a powerful motivator, grabbing attention, prompting viewers to pay more. Oh yeah, let me give you money. But the problem with that type of motivation is it's a motivation to take action, but it's a motivation to take one-time action. I can't tell you how many times I've talked with companies that go, "Oh, we implemented a security policy working group in our organization, and we laid out a reference architecture, and we built out security pipelines." And you come back a year later and say, "Oh, how's that going?" "Oh, that group got disbanded. It was really expensive. It was slowing us down. And partially it's because that fear, that anxiety level was gone. They had gone through the process, but there was a perception of, well, we did what we needed to do and we've closed up some of the gaps, but that constant uh, reinforcement of fear, that anxiety isn't there. And so what ends up happening is, especially executives that might not be dealing directly with the security ramifications, but are paying those bills to say, let me invest in this, they might suddenly have a backlash and distrust of, well, you said these things were happening. I spent tons of money in, but I don't actually see any change. I might be defensive of, my organization doesn't have these problems. This must be somewhere because I'm blinded to what's actually maybe going on. And there's a good chance of having that emotional overload of excessive fear can leave people feeling helpless or anxious and leading to really disengagement on, all right, let's get to the solution. So now that I may have cranked your anxiety levels up, definitely nowhere near as much as Scott Bly did earlier today, let's start reframing. And actually, I'll back up one more. The title of the slide, the critical need for focus on API security. Unchecked APIs are unacceptable risks. Even that will put people on the defensive. That assertion. But if we change it and just change the slide, and I didn't recreate the whole slide. I wanted to just kind of start rethink how we can reframe the conversation. I want to unlock business agility by streamlining secure API delivery. I want to make sure that we have policies put in place to do it in an organized fashion. So how can I leverage, APIs are built and deployed differently. Let's look at that as a good thing. It allows me to innovate faster. Now, if I can do that with controls, that security point. And as security operatives, we all know that these are real problems we need to deal with, but let's actually present it as we're going to make sure that you can innovate faster by leveraging the right type of interface for the right business engagement and do it at scale, allowing developers to leverage the right tools regardless of their programming language. Scale in any environment. I want to be able to make sure that I don't have a lock-in problem, that I am, if I need to change my workload dynamics, that I can and still have the meeting my business criticality concerns. So instead of focusing on what's the risk of losing one transaction, what's the value of the next million transactions? And let's make sure that we can process all the transactions regardless of the workload being thrown. Again, that attack vector workload, but regardless of the workloads being thrown by noisy neighbors, the bots of the world against our service. How can we make sure that we can still process the real work being done? So focusing on the positive. How can we reduce that total cost of ownership of your whole estate by looking at not only things around making sure we don't have duplicates of APIs, that we don't have redundancy, that we improve efficiencies, that we can make sure that we have traceability and auditability, that that visibility in the platform is there. So again, shifting the language and landscape. And finally, trust via compliance and security. I don't know a single organization that doesn't say that trust, whether it be trust from their own teams, trust from different line of businesses inside the organization, and of course, trust from the market from outside is not important. And be able to do that in a consistent, compliant, and security approach, which all ties back to the brand. My brand has meaning. And when you talk to the C-suite and you say, hey, how do you think APIs impact your brand and how people think about your brand? Suddenly it's all right, let me actually look at it from an investment point that I'm used to dealing with from a marketing perspective, from a packaging perspective. And suddenly APIs is that product that I can apply my brand logic to. And suddenly the leverage of security is the same. Just like offices have spent tons of money making sure that the people coming into those offices are the right people, we can start focusing on making sure that the users coming into these APIs are the right users. So how apps will be built and attacked, in the past and still in the current, not everything's moved over to, over yet, but developer centric. I will posit it out there that over the past 20 years, everything developer centric, even people that are focused on building open API specifications in our head, is UI focused. We still come back to tangible objects. We still are very interface driven humans. And that's how we think, how we interact with the world. And we've put in a machine contract different ways of interacting with business services that make tangible sense if we were to do it in a physical space. So very UI focused still, even though sometimes the API that we're dealing with has nothing to do with a UI. But the way we think, the way we design things tend to be UI focused. But as we move into this agentic space, it truly will be AI led because of that machines are actually designing it. So the way a machine looks at building out a service. Now, right now, most agentic systems are very trained on the human methodology. But as we start looking at how can I optimize the way contracts are designed, how can I optimize the interaction between two different agents, where it's agent and agent communication, this is going to slowly change the way we really think about the API contract, where it becomes far more of a technical interface and less of a UI focused interface of the way we think about it. So with API security, kind of coming back to, well, Dan, you've talked about all these problems. You've talked, let's change the language. We keep focusing on the developer. Like a lot of the talks today were let's look at the code. Let's look at that classic development problem or the vibe coding problem of, okay, am I going to get good code out of this coworker that is now an agent? And as we've seen, often I, as a developer, have to know that what it's giving me isn't good enough. And so from a AppSec point of view, if we look at it, okay, I can, again, I'll point back to Scott. I really do enjoy his talk. I can fix it in dev or I can fix it in operations. And we have lots more developers than we have operations. But the problem is we've been trying to fix it in dev for a decade, 2 decades. We can look at the OWASP. I'm not going to pull up the OWASP, but look at the OWASP pre the APIs, just the original OWASP, and you can look at, of course, the OWASP for APIs. There hasn't been a lot of change. We keep seeing that the same problems keep coming up again and again. And partially that's because we as developers are not a collective we. We are individuals. And yes, we can put guide rails and governance and try to improve security in different ways. But developers are going to say, oh, as I'm developing, I'm going to choose this framework. I'm going to choose this language. I'm going to play with these new things and throw it into production. Then I'm going to go work on something completely different. And someone else has to go maintain it if you're lucky that someone's maintaining it. So security is playing a constant game of whack-a-mole with all of these different things. Now, I will say that I'm not saying we give up on developers. Please don't think of that. I'm just saying we can't focus on solving all of the API at the wire capability sets around API security at the developer toolkit inside of the developer code base. So yeah, I'm not going to be able to solve everything in JS and PHP and Ruby and Python and Java because my developer skills are going to constantly change. Now, I still think that everybody should be still focused on the people, process, and technology. We should still continuously invest in secure development practices. We can always be better at that, and we can always learn and try to focus on that security by design approach. So I'm not saying give up on that. I'm not saying that we shouldn't give up on employee training. If anything, we should continue to increase employee training, fostering a culture of security awareness, not just from a security compliance, oh, I got a phishing email, but security and compliance from a developer perspective. And that really needs to look at changing and being more widespread about how we train our developers. Implementing strong authentication in our applications, making sure that that's done every time, without question. And then data encryption at minimum, whether it be TLS, shouldn't be a question anymore, but it's amazing how often I still find organizations saying, oh, it's deep inside. We don't do TLS. That's not necessary. To data at rest. And then, of course, starting to look at where we need to go with post-crypt or post-quantum. But that's further out. Let's solve some of the problems that we're currently dealing with today. And of course, regular audits and monitoring still need to be a big part of the focus. So I want us to make sure that we're empowering our developers. But at the same time, how can we help unburden the developer and at the same time unburden the AppSec team? And so I think I'm going to actually go ahead and skip over this slide because I know I'm running really low on time here. A big part of this needs to be that we give the developers the right tools that they can put in front of their APIs. I'm a big believer in a gateway approach. Kong, again, has a very strong gateway, providing all of the authentication, authorization, validation, audit controls, traceability, token mediation, pulling that away from the actual service implementation, putting it at a policy enforcement point, whether that be a policy enforcement point that sits close to the the business application. So down at the microservice level, down at as part of a service mesh, at the Kubernetes ingress, at a more centralized gateway, at a cloud edge gateway, however we want to deliver. And if we'd love you to do it with Kong, but at the same time, I want to just look at how can you do this better inside your organizations? How can you deliver security for those APIs in a declarative approach, not writing code? I want to be able to say, all right, traceability, enable. Where do I need to send it? Here. And make sure that I can allow developers to configure this, give them the flexibility and self-service to meet their needs, but then feed all of those, the insights and requirements back to the SecOps teams. And at the same time, make it easier for when someone says, oh, we need to go to TLS 1 or 1.3, and we need to make sure that we're only using the Cypher suite, that we can enable that across our full API state easily and consistently without having to go back to that developer whack-a-mole and go, all right, developers, everybody get into their Git repos and let's start doing rebuilds and let's start updating all of our application endpoints. Eventually, we want to do that. We want to make sure that all the endpoints meet the security needs. But if we can at least get the security compliance requirements as close to that business application as possible to start reducing the threat vector, the better we get.
All right, Dan. Are you just about to get through everything you wanted to?
We'll call it for the day. Yeah.
All right. I mean, it's there's so much there to think about. I mean, your point about like, the importance of a gateway, it is definitely one of our number one most highly recommended best practices, right? It's a way to, I mean, they're all the technical benefits, but I think, Dan, like just to have that sort of consistent, common management layer of all your APIs, right? To set common policies, to have visibility, to be able to monitor and track, to define how you do things. It's to me, it's the foundation of a governance layer for your APIs.
And as a quick tease, Kong has an AI gateway. So again, as a product plug, I have to do it. Where we have a lot of security policies that are specific for AI. So as you're building apps and agents, you have your AI providers providing that decoupling layer, which is just good from a monetization perspective. The cost of these different LLMs are going to change. The which LLM I'm interested in using, I might want to change based on the type of workloads I'm sending it, but also I want to have things like semantic prompt guards built in without having to worry about does that LLM vendor support that capability versus a different LLM vendor. So
Yeah.
move, kind of that shift some of the security concerns away, have that decoupling can really provide benefit.
Well, Dan, thanks so much, man. I think we could spend many more hours on this topic, but I appreciate you sharing with us today. And we'll definitely you have to bring you back another time.
Thank you.
All right, very good.